want the intro?
Yeah, let's do the intro.
Great. So, hi everyone. We are sat in the Brewdog Outpost in Silicon Docks in Dublin. And we've just come back from the NEVO show, the biggest EV show in Ireland. So Luke and I are doing a bit of a debrief as to what went down and what we saw and how it all went.
Love it.
Yeah.
So how was the show?
The show was great.
Let's start.
I think the best thing with the show was we had the biggest stand that Bo's ever put together. It was super cool, and because we've got limited sort of display materials and stuff, we filled it with Bo. So we were on stand with 12 Bo M, and that just meant that tons of people could come and have a poke around and talk to us. And in the event, it was flat right out for 10 hours, just an endless procession of thousands of people. So we feel like if no one in Dublin had heard of us 2 days ago, they've definitely heard of Bo now.
And how was the response? What was the reaction?
Epic, actually, that we were the only non-EV thing, the only non-automotive thing at the show.
Yeah.
So we were a bit of a standout in that way. But the thing you notice when you're at a show which is EV focused, people ask such nuanced questions and people are really interested to get into the detail of the vehicle. And something like Bo, where it's engineered to a very high level and where we've put a lot of care into every feature, you need people to give you the time to care about those details, to understand those details. And so from our point of view, just the folks coming around, we really couldn't have asked for better. That was exactly who we wanted to talk to. It just meant we all had some great conversations and a lot of fun.
So what were the three biggest questions you got?
Three biggest questions. Number one, amusingly enough, was legislation. So in Ireland, the legislation sort of flip-flop back and forward a bit. They were not legal, but the punishments were very low and the Garda didn't seem to really enforce it. They were then legalized. So everyone thought, great, I can now ride e-scooters. They then got banned from certain public transport. This wasn't actually the government. This was the drivers' union said, we've seen a video somewhere in the world of a cheap e-scooter catching on fire. We don't want them on our buses or on our trams. And so the operator just said, right, fine, no e-scooters. So there was a lot of confusion from people as to whether e-scooters were legal, were not legal. And to clear that up, in Ireland, e-scooters, regulated e-scooters, which meet the regulations, are legal in cycle lanes and on roads. So you can ride e-scooters in Ireland as much as you like. And I've got to recommend it because the congestion in Dublin is kind of crazy. So if you want the single biggest life hack you can make today, go get yourself an e-scooter and take it for a ride through Dublin. It'll blow your mind.
What about
The other two biggest questions? Sorry, the legislation was a big one. So I got carried away. So basic product specs was one. Like, how much range has Bo got? 50 kilometers, since you ask. How much power has it got? How long does it take to charge is the really big one. So people ask that. And a full charge on Bo from 0 to 100% is about 4 hours. Generally, because you charge at 30-ish%, it normally comes up 2.5, 3 hours. And then the other big one is what makes this one different. And our sort of, the way we try and summarize that, rather than spending like an hour chewing someone's head off, it's the key is that we come from automotive backgrounds. So the whole way that we've approached every feature on the Bo is how can we take everything that we were doing on cars and how can we compress that down into a small perfected vehicle that is very human in its scale, very appropriate to the city, can move through the congestion like Quicksilver, but has all of the same experiential brilliance that you expect from a car now. So something that will delight you every time you ride it, every time you use it. So that's what we try and say is every other scooter in the world has kind of come from toys, which have then been ruggedized. Whereas with Bo, we'd spent years developing cars and we've tried to take those cars and we tried to compress them down into something that is like perfect tiny EV.
Love it.
I think that those are the top three.
Within more in the second one, so multiple.
I loaded up the second one. I way overloaded the second one. The third.
Got one more.
I guess the other thing that came out a fair bit was around riding safety and so forth. I think because it hasn't been regulated, there's been a few sort of outlaws and mavericks who were happy to ride even though it wasn't legalized. I think the upshot of that is there's a load of people who are now worried about riding. So they're saying to themselves, are these things safe? Am I going to feel comfortable on it? People have a perception, and I don't know where it's really come from, that scooters are somehow weirdly dangerous. And so there was a lot of questions around that. And I think it's a super difficult one to answer. If someone thinks that e-scooters are dangerous, that's their perspective. But the two things I always say are, the exact same physics applies to a scooter as applies to anything else. I know the wheels are a bit smaller and so forth, but it's not that dramatically different to a bicycle or something, that they don't sort of topple over involuntarily, right? We've always found the learning curve on e-scooters, anecdotally, is way shorter than on something like a bicycle. So generally, we've put people from 14 to 85 or thereabouts onto e-scooters, and we've never had someone fail to pick it up within about 200 meters. So compare that to how long it took you to ride a bike. If they're that dangerous, then it would surely be a little more difficult to get the hang of it. And then the last thing is the data. I had a funny conversation yesterday with a science teacher who said, these things are just so dangerous. I was like, well, you're a science teacher. The data says that when you analyze thousands of rides, they are basically no more dangerous than something like a bicycle. And our man was pretty certain that the data was wrong, but I'm just saying, across studies around the world, it's been shown again and again and again that e-scooters are not particularly dangerous to ride. And as soon as you experience one, you tend to agree with that. So yeah, those were the three big hitters, I think. Law, product specs, riding experience, and people expressing their nervousness around riding one.
Gotcha. And crazy show, we were lucky enough to
Crazy. Right next to Porsche and Tesla.
And Lexus is
yeah, and
of our
our plus
neighbor.
one, yeah. Guiding the party. But Porsche and Cybertruck were pulling in the crowds.
Yeah. And we were coming.
We were somewhere in there. I think probably a hot second Cybertruck. Slightly punching over the Macan, but we definitely... The Cybertruck just pulls people in like a honey trap.
No, for real. Okay, but with that, thing you might change on the event with the next year.
One thing I would change with the event, so I wouldn't change anything about the stands, the setup. It was an epic show. If you didn't go to NEVO this year, like definitely, whether you want an EV or not, definitely go next year, because it's a brilliant show. They really put on a good effort. From our point of view, and it doesn't apply to anybody else, I would have loved a test track. The best thing with Bow, especially if someone's scooter curious, so maybe they haven't experienced a scooter before, is testing it. And I really wish that we had been able to put people on the scooter and say, there you go, how about that for an experience? Because it just blows people's minds when they've never ridden one before. So it was indoors, so there's kind of a limit to what you can do, and we're heading for the middle of winter here, so I can understand the logic not to. However, it would make a huge difference to the show from our point of view. If people could understand what makes these things great, could ask the questions about stuff like legislation, and they could jump on and go for a quick lap, even if it's only a small test track. We found it in shows around the UK and elsewhere. It's really effective for just converting people and for giving people that real world experience. So the one thing I'd love for NEVO 2025, a great test track would be such an epic addition.
That'd be awesome.
That would be cool.
All right. That's 1 year. What can people do in the short term?
Come and take test rides. So there are two ways you can jump on a Bow. If you go into the centre of town in Dublin, Lifty, who are, I think, on Chapel Street, have a Bow in stock that is a demonstrator. You can go and you can ride Bow out into Dublin today. The next thing is, we do test ride events. So go to our email or go to bow.world. So our website is www.bow.world. No .com, no .anything, bow.world. And if you go there, the first thing that happens is you get an email pop up. Sign into the Bow. We call it the Bow Insiders. And if you sign up there, whenever we're doing a pop-up drive event, a test drive event, we will email. So if you want to get your hands on a Bow and give it a Bow, then you can sign onto our email list. You don't get spammed to hell. We take real care over any emails that go out, and we will tell you if we're going to be doing a test ride event, because it's great fun and you've got to come along and try it.
Love that. All right. Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Luke.
All right. Let's go ride some bows.